love helping entrepreneurs write, publish, and profit from their books. I'm really excited to let you know about a program that my partner, Janine Brisbois, and I are offering. We are inviting you to join a 30-day program that will get your book from idea to first draft. Today's the day. Now's the time. You are the person. Stop the avoidance. Teach your audience. Your book awaits. For more information about this special program, send me an email at ruthlsnyder@me.com. Welcome to Choices from Struggle to Strength. Today, I'm pleased to have Dr. Lana Wynn Scroggins with me. Welcome, Dr. Lana.
Hi, thank you so much, Ruth, for having me on your show.
You're very welcome. So tell us what you're passionate about and why.
Well, actually, I am passionate first and foremost about Jesus and giving him to others in inspirational gifts, such as my books, and spending time that I'm spending now with this new project that I'm doing with the kids and helping teach them how to give Jesus with their books and co-authoring with me in new books.
That sounds really fascinating. Tell us a little bit more about your newest project.
Well, my newest project is just amazing. I have found that co-authoring, well, let me step back. Just a little backstory as far as knowing how that I was a nanny for several years for different children. So I really have a gift with working with children. And so anyway, I decided that I wanted to see about helping children become co-authors in books with me. And so I sat down with a couple of children, and it was just amazing how it would light up their eyes to know that they were going to actually be an author of a book. And actually I sat down with three boys that were 9, 10, and I think one was 9. So I think they were like 2, 9, 10, between that age group. Anyway, it's hard to get a child sit down for 15 minutes, but I was going over this form with them on where they would pick their character, where they pick the character they want to teach to, and they had choices to make, and then what Bible object lesson that they wanted to teach. And like one of them picked serving others, one of them picked being thankful, the other one picked another Bible object lesson. So then when I would show them, I'd say, okay, let's go on Google and let's see how we can find some ways that we can do that. And then I would ask them if they had some ideas about how they would do that. And they would like sit there and go, oh, let's find more. Let's find more. And they were so excited about doing the project that it just, well, we just got, the more they excited about it, the more I just kept doing it, because I didn't think we were going to do it more than 20, 30 minutes, But the more excited they got, the more involved they were in doing the elements for the book. It was just like awesome. In fact, I even let one 10-year-old create his cover, and he did an amazing job. I usually create the covers for them, but this kid was just real creative, and he just had a good sense about it. So the more he thought, the more he got into it, the more, and it turned out to be really an awesome cover. So anyway, just the excitement. I will have to say there was one kid that, it was so funny. He looked at me and he said, okay, now who's going to make the money on these books, you or me? And I said, oh, that is just so funny. I said, Evan, you're going to make the money on the books. We're doing this as a, ministry to you. And we're going to, we're going to buy, in fact, we're going to buy the books, and then your parents are going to help you sell the books. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. In fact, on the first weekend in December at our farmers market that we have downtown,
Mhm.
I'm going to have 3 of them, and we're going to do a little book signing. And they are so
Fun.
excited. They can't wait to be at the farmers market and sell their books and sign their books. They're practicing. They're practicing signing their name. I mean, it's really
Love it.
so funny.
They're learning
Yeah.
all kinds of skills.
Yeah, yeah, but their parents are so excited that the kids are excited, and the kids have their name on their books, and I'm up to 8 kids now, so that's pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah. I think it's my best project yet.
Hmm. So
Mhm.
let's go back a little bit. And could you tell us a little bit about some of the difficult events that you've experienced and how that has made you into the person that you are today?
Well, there are several options that help me in building my confidence in God and the way that God has moved in my life. I know there was this one incident where I was a nanny for some parents for several years. And then it became a point where they were getting ready to move, but I didn't want to move with them to the new location. And it was time, the child had grown to the point where he didn't really need me anymore. It was time for
Mhm.
them to go on and be a family. And that was really kind of a stressful situation though, because they didn't want me to, they wanted me to go with them, and they didn't want me to leave them. And if I left them, then I left them with pretty much nothing. I mean, homeless, not very much money. I mean, because they didn't pay me when I worked for them. They provided for things I needed and everything,
Mm.
basically. But I never really made a lot of money with that adventure, I should say, in my life. But it was a great adventure. I love the little child. But anyway, so I left, and I had less than $100 in my pocket. I didn't have a home. I had a vehicle, and so I went to the church that I go to, and the pastor, um, he was so kind. He already kind of knew part of what my story was going to be,
Mm.
and so anyway, he gave me $400, and I went home to my mother's. She had kind of a broken down camper, but she was willing to give it to me, and gave me a few, a few dollars to help me, like, just kind of get started in life. Anyway, I drove my camper back down to where I live here, and so I had a camper,
Mm.
and a few dollars. And so when I drove in, my friends that I was really good friends with said, oh, they said they were all over at the soccer field to come over there after I had unhitched my camper, because someone was going to let me put it on their property till I had a place to put it.
Mhm.
Anyway, make a long story short, I went over there. I didn't have very much. And as I walked up, one of my friends came up to me and she said, we need a physical education teacher at Faith Christian School. And would you be interested? Because she knew I did sports and everything. I said, sure. You don't even know that I have a bachelor's degree in physical education, but I do. And she said, oh, really? That's even better. And I said, sure. But they don't require degree teachers at that school, because it's uh, not it's a private school. And so, but that's a help. And so, anyway, so she says, can you start tomorrow? And I said, sure. So I walk into town, I have my camper, I got a job, then I go to school the next day, and the pastor of the school says, well, he talked to someone in his congregation, and they have a lot down the street that they'd rent me for my camper. So I got a lot to put my camper on. I got a job, and I got a little bit of money. So from there, I was able to build a home and start my own life as my own person. And you know, it was just really just totally, the whole time I was like, just having the confidence that God was going to lead me the next step
Mm.
along the way.
Mhm.
And so when we had a major hurricane here about 4 years ago called Hurricane Michael that
Mm.
wiped everything out in some regards. I had some friends that lost 2-story homes. They came home to just a concrete slab. I mean, there were subdivisions that just kind of got blown into the wind. We
Mhm.
saw people's refrigerators, appliances, clothes hanging in the trees. I mean, it was just a mess. Everything just got blown away.
Mm.
That hurricane. And the place where I was renting was actually it was destroyed too. So I had to move in with some friends. So there again, I was homeless again,
Mm.
had no place to go, but I did have a job that time. And so anyway, so I moved in with some friends, and then God provided again for me to be able to get me another. This time I got another camper. I wasn't living in a camper before. I was living in a trailer. But anyway, I got a camper. A friend of mine down the street had a lot that I could put it on, and
Mm.
God moved me to there. And then she decided to sell that, and it got to a point where I said, God, I have got to have a stable condition here. What can we do? So he, right before the prices went up sky high around here,
Mhm.
helped me find a lot for a reasonable price. And I was able to build a pole barn, put some rock down, a concrete, and have my camper on that lot. So now I have a permanent home place that, is something that God has been providing me just every time I needed a provision, God has brought it. And even if, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, even if God doesn't, rescue us, we're still going to serve the Lord.
Mm.
Well, even if we got another hurricane that came through here and blew my camper to bits and the pole barn and the whole 9 yards, I still got that land with all that rocks on it. I have insurance on my camper. I could start over, and
Mm.
I wouldn't really have to worry about getting a place to live. I could even pitch a tent if I had to. I mean, there is amazing things that you can do, in life if you have to for a period of time. But God has provided me a place, and I'm so thankful.
That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're
So you
welcome.
mentioned that because of what you've been through, I mean, your attitude has obviously changed from what am I going to do to, well, if that happens, I have my land, I can pitch a tent. Um,
Yeah.
is there any other ways that you've noticed that this struggle has made you a stronger person?
Well, I guess in lots of ways that it just um comes back to whenever I do get discouraged, everybody gets discouraged,
Mhm.
but it can be a momentary thing instead of a long-term thing. I can always go, okay, now I was looking at my bank book, and thinking, well, I'm really needing some help here because, things are looking a little like we're going in the wrong direction. And so, but I have to think back, and I have to remember. And it's like our pastor was teaching yesterday in his sermon. He says, just go back to the basics. Just go back to the remembrance that God gives you, and remember that you're a child of his. He loves you very much. He's not going to ever leave you, forsake you. There
Mm.
are many things that God has given us in his word that we just need to remind ourselves of those times when we are like looking at our checkbook and saying, oh, I think we're going backwards instead of forwards.
Mhm.
But, then you also remind yourself the lilies of the valley,
Mm.
the sparrow that he says, if I can take care of a sparrow, I can take care of you.
Mhm.
If he took care of all the children of the Israelites in the desert and provided food for them more than they could, contain, he did the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. I mean, um, God did all kinds of things. He does all kinds of things. We just have to remind ourselves when we start looking at the problems
Mhm,
and see that God does have the solution. We just have to remind ourselves of what those solutions are and how He's brought us out. I
mm,
mean, all I got to do is look back and say, okay, there was a day when I had less than $100 in my pocket. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. I
mm,
didn't know what I was going to do. And, I just kept moving towards what God showed me what to do.
mhm,
And each time, he provided a way. So I can look at my checkbook and I can say, whoops, it's kind of a little interesting, the numbers, but then I can also know that my God owns all the cattle on 1,000 hills, and He has no problem of making my checkbook look bigger than it looks right now. It's not, He is my source, and He will provide.
mm.
So I have no problem.
So, what advice, other than remembering who God is and what He can do, what advice do you have for people who are going through a similar struggle of homelessness or not having money to buy the basics?
You mean, and then they're not looking to God to provide it, you mean?
Well, you
Or,
could do both.
well, I just don't see how any, well, I don't know. I guess I would really be lost
Mm,
and I might really be discouraged and um, I might look at things a little different if, you know, if I didn't have my faith in God and the confidence that He's already um, helped me through many situations.
mhm,
Because there was a day one day that I got told that I had breast cancer, back in 1999, and it was stage 2, and I was going to have chemo, and I was going to have radiation, I was going to have an operation, and I was like, well, if I hadn't had, my faith in God to fall, well, I say fall back on, to really boost, I really don't really mean to say it that way, but kind of does work that way. But to really be my foundation, then that could have really sent me in a spiral of, I'm gonna die. I mean, this is not working out very good. Well, I had a foundation built, and I came through that. But I can see how someone who doesn't have the foundation that I had built could really be into despair, and it'd be really difficult for them to face that situation alone. And then, back in 2016, when the cancer came back, in multiple places, and they said, now you have stage 4 breast cancer, and you've got it all, in all these spots on your head, and in your femur and your back. I mean, you got you're going to have some more radiation. I mean, you're going to have treatments every month. I mean,
mm,
you know, and then, in 2018, when we thought it was doing pretty good, and then my lungs started filling up with fluid
mm,
every, and I had to have my lung drained every week because they had to put a tube in, and then every 2 weeks, and then it just because the fluid kept building up every month. I mean, I could, if I didn't have a foundation of knowing that the confidence in God was going to see me through my situation,
mhm,
then I could say, someone that doesn't have that, to really build them up, I can see where they could really spiral into a real depression, or a real, despair, or it could really be, kind of, I would feel bad for that person because they would really have a lot of, you know, heartache, and it would just not make them. I can just see how how even with the foundation I have built, even with the confidence I have in God, knowing He's going to help me through all these situations, it can still get a little daunting to, know that, well, I, um, I just don't know how someone else can make it without having,
Mm.
a foundation that God is really going to see you through the situation. I just think it would be really sad,
Mhm.
actually.
Yes, some people don't have the support spiritually, and that must be awfully difficult. You mentioned a pastor and a friend. Is there anything else that anybody did when you were going through your homelessness that helped you figure out a way to make things work?
I believe that um, at that time I had a good, stable foundation of several friends,
Mm.
and they all kind of rallied around, and said, what can we do? Because they knew my situation. They
Mhm.
knew the situation where I was working with this family, and that, it was time for me to move on and be my own person. And that was going to be kind of difficult because I had never done it in my whole life. I mean, when I went home to get that camper and brought it back down to where I live at, I spent the first night in a Walmart parking lot in Birmingham, Alabama, all by myself for the first time in my whole life in my own home. I mean, I had lived with people, helping them with their families all the years up until that point. That was the first time I'd ever lived in my own, quote, what I would call home. Uh, and it was like, then when I came back, I had a lot of friends. And then when the situation happened again with Hurricane Michael, and I had to be homeless again to figure out what I was going to do again, I had, I have a wealth of friends. I had another whole set of friends that had built by then,
Mhm.
and they invited me to come to their home, stay with them, and they let me camp out with them. We were all camping out anyway because Hurricane Michael tore up all the we didn't have anything. I mean, there's no stores, there's no electricity, I mean, we were all just, even though they had a home that wasn't demolished, they still didn't have the luxuries of
Mhm.
anything. We just had a shell to camp out in
Mhm.
because we weren't having to camp in a tent like somebody else. I mean, until and it took weeks to get the electricity back
Mhm.
and water and the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was a disaster. But we all ride around each other, and and then when I was with them, we just, I just kept telling them, and they kept telling me, and we kept bringing each other up because we just had to keep shoring each other up that God was going to provide.
Mhm.
God was going to help them with, fixing their house. They had some things in their house that would need to be fixed. They lost, a whole shed that got blown into the smithereens and lost all the stuff that was in that. I mean, they had a loss,
Mhm.
but their loss wasn't as great as mine as far as losing the whole structure.
Mhm.
And so anyway, but we all just kept, shoring each other up, and saying, we're gonna make it through this. And we have. I mean, it's just been 4 years, but there's still people in my area that are still trying to build back and still trying to make it. And but little bit by little bit, it's all, I mean, I've got several friends that have built their homes back, and even though they lost everything, they didn't lose each other, and they didn't lose their life. And they were, I mean, they were able to, on that foundation, put, some more boards together. They didn't lose each other in the storm.
Right. Wow. You've been through a lot. Thank you for sharing with us, and I really
Oh,
appreciate
you're
your
welcome.
perspective. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about your life or your business or whatever?
The main thing that I've come to at this point in my life is that every day is precious,
Mm,
and that um, everyone we know is is precious too, and that I think that God wants us to succeed,
mm,
but what people all often think about as success may not always be um, the success that they think it should be. As far as, like, for instance, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about how she's a big picture person. She sees the concepts,
mhm,
and and I'm a doer. I will do it. You tell me what to you give me something to do, and I guarantee you that as soon as it can be done, I have it done. I'm a doer. And I'm not a big picture person. I'm actually the person that knows the solution.
mm,
She knows the problem. I don't know the problem. We were talking about how I have all these solutions and I can create all this stuff and I can do all this stuff, but I don't know the problem. I don't have the big picture. And for years, I always thought she was the more successful person because she got the concept. She was the big picture person.
mm,
She had more. I mean, the little doer doesn't always get the fame or the recognition, or the doer um, doesn't always stand out as much as the big picture person does. And so I think now that I have decided that I was going to embrace my core values, I'm
mm.
going to embrace the fact that I am a doer and I'm a very good doer and I can get a lot done. And it doesn't matter if I don't know the problem, I do know the solution. And so I have found in the last few years that the more I embrace the person that I really am, I don't have to feel regret over not accomplishing things that I could have accomplished in my life had I not just embraced the person that I really am. So if I were to give anybody any advice going forward in their life, is to sit down, figure out what your core values are in life,
Mm,
and decide what they are and how you can accomplish and bring them into your life to so that you can embrace who you really are in life. We know who we kind of are, but we also know our purpose is to share God and God's love and share Jesus with others. But we often can get distracted by who we are because
mm,
we're looking to be someone else that we see is more successful, more this, more that. And if we just spend time being who we are and be us, then we can be so much more happier
mm,
being who we are than who we want to be. Because if you be who you are, then
mhm,
you don't need to be anything else.
mm. That's great advice. All of us struggle with that, coming to just enjoy who God made us to be.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Lana. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, there are several ways. Actually, I'm in the middle of creating a shop for my books, but right now I do have a website called givingjesus.com.
Mhm.
And so someone can go to givingjesus.com and you can find me there. And then Lana Wynn Scroggins at Gmail also works as well. And I'm actually working on a new project where I'm going to be a hub and a bridge for authors. And I'm working on a project where I'm going to join authors in a new collaboration project where I'm going to be a bridging authors together in collaboration called your author hub. So that's going to be a new thing coming out in January in the new year. And if you're an author and you would like to connect with me, then feel free to send me an email at Lana Wynn Scroggins at gmail.com, and I can help you with looking for new collaborations in the coming year.
That sounds great. As authors, sometimes it can feel very lonely, and collaborations are so helpful in building our communities and helping with our book sales and even helping us learn how to do things better. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
looking
true.
forward to.
Yeah, and even if you have a child that you would like to put in the co-author program that I have going, you can also reach out to me for that. And it's very affordable, and it's also a dynamic way for you to get your kids to be introduced to being an author. You'd be surprised at how many kids would really like to see their name on a book. It's amazing.
Well, how many adults want to see their names on a book? Same thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lana, for what you've shared with us today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation on Twitter Spaces.
Great. Thank you very much, Ruth, for having me today. I really have enjoyed being your guest.